welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the Johnny Glock's 3.5 connector and compare it with a stock connector that comes with the gun. For those of you who don't know, Johnny is the authority in all things Glock, and on his website he offers different kinds of triggers, connectors, and other products and services to suit whatever purpose your Glock will serve. Since it's already installed, let's break down the gun to take a closer look. Okay, let's start by taking the gun apart. And this back here, on top of the trigger housing, is your connector. Okay, and next we're going to pop these 3 pins out. Okay, now we're going to remove the slide stop and the locking block. Once you've done all that, you can take out the whole trigger housing. And that piece right there on the bottom right is the trigger bar. And when you pull the trigger, it wants to move backward toward the connector. And what the connector does is it directs it downward. It's in this downward motion where the trigger breaks and the shot is fired. And here I'm demonstrating the reset. The trigger bar sits on top of that ledge on the connector, and when it slides off, you can hear that audible click, like that. Okay, now let's remove the trigger bar from the housing. You do that by pulling back and then to the side until that arm of the cruciform is out of that little notch. And that's your connector right there. All right, if you want to remove the connector, you flip the housing over and you put a punch in there and just push the connector out. There it is. Okay, and this here is the Johnny Glock's connector. It's really shiny from the polishing. And this is the stock connector that came with the gun. If you take a look at the lip of these ledges, the stock is rather flat compared to the Johnny Glock's. It's more rounded. It helps for the reset. Also, depending on the angle of this ledge on the connector, you'll have different pull weights and breaks. This orange line is an exaggerated representation of a stock 5.5 connector's ledge. When it comes to connectors, the more severe the angle, the more sudden the drop off, the more sudden the break is after the wall. For connectors like these, the trigger bar is intersecting with the connector's ledge at an almost perpendicular angle, increasing resistance and increasing the force necessary to move the trigger bar back and down. As a result, trigger pull increases. On the Johnny Glock's 3.5 connector, the downward slope is more gradual and less sudden. The trigger bar rolls down the connector's ledge until it eventually breaks, creating a lighter trigger pull. This is called a rolling break. Okay, when putting back the connector, you want to put it in that hole, but you want to make sure that it doesn't sit flush against the trigger housing. The connector can't sit flush against the trigger housing. If it does, the gun won't fire. If it sticks too far out, the connector will rub against the inside of the frame. So you want to find a sweet spot. Here's a stock connector with a wall, followed by the break. And here's the 3.5 connector. There's a slight wall followed by some creep right before the break. In my opinion, this connector is perfect for plinking and competitions, but I think it's much too light for EDC or home defense. But on the range, it makes the gun a lot more fun to shoot. With a lessened trigger pull weight, the less likely you are to disturb your sights while aiming, improving accuracy.